Good morning and welcome to As Goes Wisconsin, Monday, October 16th. Greg Bach is on the board. Our colleague and friend, Todd Allbaugh from the Todd Allbaugh Show, which you can hear across the Civic Media Radio Network weekdays from 1 to 3 and pretty much every other day part because, gosh, I've heard you all over the place in the
Like
last
a bad
couple of
penny,
weeks.
I keep showing up. Yeah.
Well, you're filling in for Kreitlow. You're filling in for this one. I mean, you've been a busy, busy man.
This Friday, filling in for Matt Flynn Direct on Friday afternoon. So yeah, it's
It's the Todd Allbaugh Radio Network.
No, here's what it comes down to, Greg. They look around and they say, well, who doesn't have a social life? Oh, Todd, he's available. So that's the way it goes.
I don't think that's necessarily accurate, but okay.
How are you guys doing?
We're good. Greg just got back from a wedding in Texas.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, how was that?
Yeah, it was very fun. It was the greatest wedding I've ever gone to in my life.
What made it so great?
I was back in the hotel by 5:30 p.m.
We're going to talk more about that coming up at 11:33, the greatest wedding ever held. And we would love to hear about your wedding stories and some of the great weddings that you have been to. So if you want to start thinking about that now, and then you can either call in and or text anytime at 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY.
I'm always the best man, but never the groom.
Never the groom.
Aw,
You're
Todd.
still young, Todd. There's still time.
Oh, yeah, right.
We're going to start out. I found this opinion piece in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel this morning, and I think it'll be a really interesting discussion. So it's an opinion piece by Daniel Steininger, and he is the executive director for the Daniel Hone Foundation. He's the president of the Daniel Hone Foundation. And apparently they've been taking suggestions from the public on how to make Milwaukee safer. And in the article, Daniel Steininger talks about this one suggestion that they got, the Hone Foundation's Innovation Challenge to make Milwaukee safer. One person wrote in and said, when I was in high school many years ago, every 15-year-old had to take a mandatory driver's education course. Society thought it was a good idea to have teenagers learn how to safely manage a 3,500-pound vehicle before permitting us to hit the road. Why don't we treat guns the same way? So there is a discussion going on about mandatory gun safety education in middle school. Kids would learn that guns can be lethal by looking at movies, grisly photos, talking to teenage prisoners who ruined their lives in a split second with a gun, going to a firing range to learn how to handle guns properly. So is this a good idea? 844-967-2789, 844-96-PARTY. Should we have mandatory gun safety classes in middle schools?
I read this meeting. I thank you for sending it to me, Jane. I had not seen it, and I read through it. First, I mean, I don't want to go too far down this road, but I get what the writer, and that's what you just read, the point they're trying to make. But this brings up like a whole other issue. I don't want to go down the road, but this whole thing about not getting a driver's license. I mean, when I was in school, it was like you could not wait to turn 15 to get your permit and then wait to get 16 to get a driver's license. And now like my niece is like almost, she's going to be 17 in the spring. And it's like, yeah, well, I'll get around to it. And there's just a very different attitude. And it's like, oh, my parents will drive me. They don't. So, I mean, I don't know that it's completely analogous to say that we're giving 3,500 people 3,500-pound vehicles to quote unquote kill someone. I don't quite go along with that. I get the point. And I don't think it's really important as I read this to step back for a second and say, look, I grew up in a town of 5,000 people in Southwest Wisconsin. I've never lived, as a kid in Madison. I've lived 25 years in Madison. I've certainly never lived in Milwaukee. And so I think that the experience of this writer and certain people, it depends on where you live, what you've grown up with, right? So I think that's number one. But also I come from a family of educators, and I'm the only goofball basically in my family that didn't go into public education. And I really think as you look through this suggestion, this to me says, wow, this is be a huge burden on our public educators and our public education system. Number one, where's the funding going to come from this? And number two, our educators are already overwhelmed. Are you going to have a dedicated gun safety instructor in every school? Or is it going to be part of middle school health class? You're going to do a unit on gun safety. And for me, I know it's trite, and I know people are going to disagree. to me, it just comes down to why are parents letting kids, 5, 6-year-olds watch, play Fortnite? My mom used to teach kindergarten. She's been retired for 12 years. She would tell of 5, 6-year-olds drawing drawings of blood and people. Where's that from? Oh, I played this video game. And they learn at a very young age that, killing doesn't mean anything. And I think maybe that's the point they're trying to say. We have to tell these kids that, yes, a gun does actually kill, and you can't just push reset and people get up. But again, is that the part of the public education to do that?
I have a really quick question. When you both were younger, was taking driver's ed, like taking that class they're talking about, was that mandatory when you were 15?
Yes.
It was
mandatory.
And we had mandatory drivers.
Because when I was
ed.
younger, it was completely voluntary. You took it when you wanted to. Because that was the thing I was wondering about. Like, when I was in high school, you didn't have to take it when you were 15. You took it whenever you were ready and your parents said yes. So, I mean, I also wonder, like, if I'm a parent and I don't want my kids working with guns, being around guns, this all goes back to the whole thing of, like, you're now telling parents how to raise the kid, that you can raise the kids better by doing this. Like, I don't want my kids taking a gun safety course in school. If I want to do that, I will be in charge of that. That's my job, not yours.
And there again, that's a great point, Greg, because like some of these other classes, parents will have the option to opt out. Well, then where do those kids go? That's another instructor, another classroom to watch the kids in a study hall that their parents don't want them to have this class. It would be a huge burden on public education.
And as you said too, how are they going to fund this? We can't even argue, or we can't even properly fund our schools the way it is without having an enormous argument. 844-967-2789, 844-96-party if you want to check in on this. From the 262, teens who ruined their lives and other lives, I think it would be a good idea to present that to some children, but maybe not when they're in middle school. Again, I think
they're playing these video games when they're in kindergarten, first grade. I mean,
which it just blows my mind. It does, and I've never even seen Fortnite. I don't know, but I know it's a very violent game. I know there's many crazy violent video games.
I mean, correct me if I've never played it either. I had somebody around me that had it. I mean, I think some of this, it's so real now that some of these remote controls, they'll actually vibrate, like, and you have a quote unquote AK-47 in your hand, and it gives you the sense, as much as a video game can, of actually shooting a semi-automatic weapon and killing someone.
Wow,
is that right, Greg?
It's true. The controllers now they're called rumble packs, and
there you go.
It works for all different kinds of games. Driving, if you come to a screech, it does do that. I just feel like we're underestimating the intelligence of young people now, especially nowadays. Like I could show you, like, there's kids out there who play video games and they understand the severity of guns. But once again, is this a universal class? Is this like, does Wisconsin create the curriculum? What are we really teaching children if we're teaching them gun safety in school? I mean, I feel like this is a very not right wing, but like I feel like it comes with its own I'm sorry, I can't think of the word, agenda. It comes with its own agenda, and that really freaks me out.
Just more embracing of guns.
Yeah, making it even more normal than they already are.
To your point, Greg, again, to me, it comes down to a certain sense of parenting. You have kids that play these games that totally get it. Other kids don't. And I also think, this show goes across Wisconsin, where I come from, in rural Wisconsin, and I can't remember whether our driver's ed was mandated or voluntary. It's been, 1985 or whatever. But the other thing that was voluntary, where I come from, but I would say 50 to 75% of the kids did it in middle school, was hunter safety.
Right.
And you signed up to go down to the courthouse on a Tuesday night for 4 weeks, and you had a conservation warden and other folks that volunteer, and they taught you that guns kill. They taught you how to handle a firearm. They taught you how to clean it and so forth, all around hunting. So there is that out there for a more rural population. I shouldn't say obviously, but I would think certainly that's less popular or available in places like Milwaukee.
844-967-2789. You can call and or text. We're talking about an opinion piece in today's Milwaukee Journal Sentinel suggesting that we should have mandatory gun safety classes across Wisconsin taught in schools to middle schoolers. Is this a good idea? Should we pursue this? Should we look at this more seriously? From the 414, don't know about making gun education mandatory for all middle schoolers. I don't think it's a good idea for all. If their parents want that for their kids, the Boy Scouts already does a pretty good job of it. Scouts do a lot of other good things as well. Yeah, it's very much, as you said, Todd, if you want to opt out and you don't want your child to take part in these gun safety classes, then you have to have someone to watch that. It's developing a whole new curriculum. It's getting it funded. I can see all kinds of issues with this, but at the same time, I really do think there's a portion of our younger population that think it's a game.
Yes, 100%.
Guns are a
Agreed.
game.
Agreed.
And also in this article, it stated some of these teenagers that they spoke with who are now serving time because of shooting and killing someone, they thought it was a toy.
Right. And they freak out, for lack of a better word, after they realize that the person is not coming back.
Is not getting up.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just callous to it. And again, guns are a huge problem. I certainly call on Republicans in particular to pass some meaningful gun laws. To your point, Jane, probably not going to happen anytime soon with the Republican legislature. But I'm not. I grew up again around guns in rural Wisconsin, and here was our gun safety. When I was about 4, my granddad said, "You see that gun case that was never locked, by the way?
Right.
You so much as open the glass, let alone touch that, you'll get a whooping." And that was it. I mean, you just knew you did not touch a gun unless you had permission to do it.
844-967-2789, 844-96-PARTY. If you want to call and or text, you can also leave a comment if you are watching the live stream. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Matt Mayer in for Kristen Fry. Greg Bach is on the board. Todd Allbaugh from the Todd Allbaugh Show joining us as regular on Monday as our co-host. And we are always looking to hear from you at 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. There's an op-ed, an opinion piece in today's Milwaukee Journal Sentinel suggesting that we teach gun safety classes in middle school. And I did not grow up in a gun household. My father was not a hunter. None of my brothers were hunters. So I for people who have handled guns, and this is part of your life, is this a good idea? 844-967-2789. Brian is on the phone from Aguanago. Good morning, Brian. What do you want to say about this?
Good morning. I just wanted to say that I think this is a horrible, horrible idea. And all you're going to achieve with something like this is teaching kids to not shoot themselves in the foot before they decide to unload on other people. I mean, give me a break. And at the same time, if you're going to want to make something like this mandatory, then you should make hockey mandatory, because I mean, it's not going to be for everyone. Not everyone's going to, like you got someone expressed earlier that a lot of kids do tend to learn about this stuff in hunter safety classes, and that's all that's needed. If a kid's not into it, not into guns or not into hunting, they shouldn't be forced to learn how to operate a gun if they don't want to. And it's, like I said, make hockey mandatory too if you're going to do that, or make ballroom dancing mandatory. I mean, give me a break.
Now, I like that idea, actually, Brian. I could go for mandatory ballroom dancing.
I used to take square dancing as a kid.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's all I had.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. 844-967-2789, 844-96-PARTY, mandatory ballroom dancing. I think that's
right. I was great. We had in PE class in Phi Ed in middle school. We had like a square dancing, and got taught the foxtrot.
Oh, wow.
Waltz, all that stuff. Yeah.
Really?
Wow, I didn't get
Yes.
the waltz. I just got square dancing. They were like, "Here you go. Find yourself a lassie."
Well, and because square dancing was pretty easy, and they gave
Right.
you the directions as you were going along. So it's like, yeah, you guys can probably handle this. We have a comment on the live stream from James Egan. We had a hunter safety class available in junior high, and it was optional, but available. If you want to offer something like gun safety, then maybe do it like a DARE program that most schools offer.
Well, that was Josh Egan, and Dare wasn't as successful though. Dare actually got some of my friends to start doing drugs.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I think the point, I think you made it, Jane, earlier, is that there are a lot of households, like, I grew up in rural Wisconsin, but you didn't have guns in your house. There are a lot of kids, and it's not just guns, right? We had Pam Yankee on I was filling in for Devils last week, and
I love her so much.
I
We
know.
love him.
Yeah, I know you and Kristen have had her on before. She's fantastic. She's actually going to be joining the Civic Media Radio Network from 5 to 6 here soon, and several stations. More on that later. But Pam and I were talking, there are a lot of kids that do not know where food comes from. They just go to the grocery store, and as odd as it might sound to folks my generation or whatever, that there are kids in school that have no concept
Right.
of a farm. And I
Right.
think it's the same way that what you're saying with guns. There are kids that have no concept beyond a video game. And so maybe putting something in the required health class in middle school where you have to teach, a 2-day unit on guns, not show them gruesome videos, but just say, look, these are guns, they're real, and part of public health is quite frankly gun safety these days. I mean the deaths. What is it? I mean, the leading cause of death amongst
Yes.
teenagers
Yes.
are guns. I mean,
Yes.
if that isn't a health issue, I don't know what is. So maybe there's a hybrid here where we put some form of gun safety in a health class. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
Well, and I kind of agree with you on that, Todd, though, too, because I think guns are so prevalent. We have more guns in this country than we have people.
Right.
And the likelihood that you may stumble over a gun or one gets dropped in front of you, I just think is an increasing concern. And like I said, I don't own guns. I didn't grow up with guns, but I have friends who have guns, and we have gone to a firearm range a couple of times
Mhm.
because I want to know what it feels like if I ever have to use one at the last minute.
Sure.
Trust me, you wouldn't want me on your side. But again, I just think they're so ubiquitous in our society that we need to do something. But whether or not this is the answer, I'm not so sure.
Agreed.
844-967-2789, 844-96-party if you want to check in. Texter from the 262, the hatred and the meanness in the world has just gotten so out of hand. I believe Trump was the instigator of opening up the Pandora's box, so I've decided I just have to watch sewing tutorials on TikTok or something.
A little quilting will go a long way. My stepmom would say that.
A little palate cleanser for
Right.
you. Yeah, absolutely.
But it is so true, right? That we are. I can't really say blame this part on Trump. There's a lot of blame on Trump, but not this specifically. But I think that people have gotten more calloused to violence.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I'm a pretty libertarian dude when it comes to, like, hey, put it all out there, let people choose. But I do think that especially younger people are just so calloused to violence, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just old fashioned, but it bothers me. And again, it gets down to parenting, which you can't legislate. I understand. I come from a divorced household. I was a latchkey kid at 11, so I get that people don't have equal opportunities, and there's a racial overtone here. But I mean, we have to work with our parents to support them so they can help educate kids at home in conjunction with the public education.
All right, we are coming up against the break. We're going to switch gears a little bit when we come back. Stay with us. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin. We are on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Metner in for Kristen Bry. Greg Bach is on the board. Our friend and colleague Todd Allbaugh is here. It's Monday. He is our co-host for the first hour while Kristen is on maternity leave. And we were talking about this proposal to have mandatory gun safety classes in schools. We're going to move on now, though, for the endless search, Todd, for a new Speaker of the House. Our own Tom Tiffany on Friday talked to Wisconsin Public Radio, and he said Republicans do not fall in line behind leadership the way Democrats did for former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Quote, "We're just not that way. We've got these people that are very independent thinkers. They're not going to have somebody in leadership browbeat them. You have to convince them," unquote.
I pay his salary.
Can I
Independent thinkers. They're a bunch of independent thinkers as opposed to a bunch of 5-year-olds.
Can I see your quote, raise you one? This is from Austin Scott. Republican of Georgia on the Ag Committee, was a candidate for a hot second over the weekend. No one had heard of him and threw his name out there just to make sure that Jordan didn't get it. When asked by Mano Raju of CNN, the Capitol reporter, the congressional reporter for CNN, how this was all making Republicans look, Austin Scott of Georgia said, quote, "It makes us look like a bunch of idiots," unquote.
Well done.
You know what? Give him the job.
No, he'll withdraw.
Right.
They would never support someone who's actually logical. Come on.
My God.
And I actually think Jordan could get it.
He could. There's been a lot of horse trading over the weekend. There are a lot of talk on the various talk shows over the weekend. Here's the problem, is that Jim Jordan, as our friend and colleague Matt Flynn likes to call him, Gymnasium, GYM, Jim Jordan, because of the alleged sexual abuse at Ohio State when Jim Jordan was an assistant coach there. By the way, he was a wrestler at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a decorated, one of the top wrestlers ever to come out of Wisconsin. Went on to be an assistant coach at The Ohio State University, where several young men testified under oath that there was a team doctor that sexually assaulted them and that Jim Jordan knew all about it and never did anything despite being asked. That doctor died by suicide, and Jim Jordan basically got off scot-free.
And that was the right, and that's what ended that.
Right.
It's not like he was exonerated.
Exactly.
It's not like none of that happened. The doctor in question killed himself, and the case came to an end.
Exactly. And add to that there's multiple accounts, not the least of which is former Republican Liz Cheney, not exactly a snowflake, who has testified under oath in the January 6th committee that no one was closer to the plan for the insurrection with Donald Trump on January 6th than Jim Jordan. So there is actually a sense of I don't want to say morality, but a sense of character, at least amongst a dozen or so Republicans in that caucus, that say we simply can't have this guy. And remember, in the closed caucus, Jim Jordan still has not gotten to the 217 votes that he needs to get on the House floor. And then we talked about this last week on my show. Trump has kind of gotten in the heads of, again, 8 to 10 of these folks. And they look at what he did being self-serving and narcissistic where he got, and it's like, well, that'll work for me. And they're holding out for no other reason, not for good government, not for democracy, not even for a political position, but for themselves. And that's causing chaos. So you've got Patrick McHenry, the Speaker pro tem, who he may become a viable candidate. You've got Gymnasium GYM Jim Jordan, who I don't think can get the votes. Steve Scalise is withdrawn. Believe it or not, there is actually on Capitol Hill right now word that Kevin McCarthy may end up being a viable candidate at some point if they can't get anybody else. And then you've got, as we just heard on CBS News on some of our stations at the top of the hour, the Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries are reaching out to see if there could be a coalition with at least, 5 or 6 Republicans to make him speaker. Remember, he would be the speaker, but Republicans could call a vacate to the chair anytime on him. So he really wouldn't be fully empowered, and any Republican that crosses over, they're toast in a primary election in their district. So are they willing to give up their seat for democracy?
To be fair, Kevin McCarthy, even when he was elected the first time, didn't really have a whole lot of power anyways. He was always walking a tightrope, always on that razor thin
100%
margin. But I mean, I guess what's McCarthy got to gain by doing this?
Well, he's obsessed with being speaker. He always has been. And he keeps vacillating, going back. No. Well, I might think about it. No, I'm out. But the reason that some people are saying don't completely count out Kevin McCarthy, and Major Garrett from CBS News over the weekend was one of these, is that, you know what? McCarthy cobbled together the votes once. And if it gets to the point where Republicans either can't elect anybody else and are unable to work with Democrats and put Hakeem Jeffries in the speaker's chair, Democrats at some point, simply to do the business of the country during an international crisis with Israel and moving towards the cliff again for a government shutdown in December, Democrats at some point may have no other choice simply to keep the body running than to join with some of those Republicans again and put Kevin McCarthy back in the chair.
If Kevin McCarthy would become speaker again, does he get a second picture?
Does he get a second gavel? 2
Does
gavels.
he get a
Right?
new picture right next to
Right.
his old picture?
I mean, this is unprecedented. That term gets overused, but it's never happened before. This is
Yeah.
unprecedented territory in United States history.
Column in the Daily Beast today, Jordan's ascension to speaker would signal a clear shift in priorities, redirecting the House Republicans in an even more MAGA orientation. Jordan said he will not support continued aid to Ukraine if he's elected speaker, which I don't understand how Republicans have become so pro-Putin.
Right. If Jim Jordan becomes speaker, we would have a pro-Putin, pro-communist, pro-authoritarian Trump ally, 2 heartbeats away from the presidency of the United States. That's where we'd be at. And Liz Cheney herself said last week, if Jim Jordan would get elected, that Republicans no longer, I'm paraphrasing, would no longer be able to defend that their party is in any way, shape, or form to be trusted with the Constitution and democracy.
Absolutely. They're just not serious.
And that's why there is this small group of Republicans who realize that. I mean, the Wisconsin delegation, not part of that, but there are Republicans who say, to your point, Jane, that we can't be that overt about it. That's what it comes down to, right?
Oh,
we can't be that overt. We have to at least pretend that we're pro-democracy. And you know what? To be fair, I still believe that there are probably a dozen or 20 in the Republican caucus that probably are.
I don't disagree with that, Todd, but we have yet to see those people stand up.
Oh, 100%, because
You know,
they rather be congressperson than protect democracy.
Exactly. And again, they're more interested in their own jobs and their own bank accounts than they are working on behalf of their constituents. And Jim Jordan is a perfect example of that. He's been in Congress for 16 years. He has not authored one bill that has even made it to the floor. I don't think he's even co-sponsored anything. John Boehner, who was the former speaker, who also got shoved out, calls Jordan a terrorist. He's been a legislative terrorist. He does nothing. He creates nothing. He makes nothing. He is a destroyer. That is what he does. He's there to throw bombs.
He has no real agenda other than trying to do this goofy, made up impeachment against Joe Biden and like you say, cause chaos and do the will of Putin. And I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm not just saying that because Republican. I'm really not. I mean, there are other people you could probably put there. I forget the guy's name. Matt Flynn has floated his name. I believe he's from Oklahoma. I believe he's one of the few Native American Republicans in that caucus. And, Matt has said, look, this is, sure, he's still a Republican, but I mean, at least he has a sense of decency.
That's in real short supply these days.
Where are we in the world where that's the saving grace? Well, he seems like a good person.
Right.
Yours. Go ahead.
I only laughed when you brought up Jim Jordan not authoring any bills. I know you had my former boss Scott Klug on for his new podcast, Lost in the Middle, last week. Great interview, by the way.
Thank you.
And when I was working for Scott, we did a town hall, and somebody goes, "You've only done whatever it was, 5 or 6 bills since you've been in Congress. You're not. What do you call that?" And Klug looked dead him in the eye, and he said, "Progress." He said Congress makes too many laws the way it is. I don't think we should be impeding people. I thought it was one of the best comebacks ever.
That's a great comeback. But you are also there to accomplish things.
Yes.
You are supposed to do things instead of just be your own placeholder.
Right.
So you can sit there and collect your $174,000 a year salary and all, your per diems and stuff. Yeah, you're actually supposed to do something on behalf of your constituents. 844-967-2789, 844-96-PARTY. If you want to check in on the endless, it appears endless search for a Speaker of the House. Texter from the 608 west from Middleton. I feel like crossing the aisle may actually benefit some Republicans. I think a district like Wisconsin 1 or Wisconsin 3, a bipartisan move to govern in a sane fashion would actually play well. I think the coalition option is actually the most likely at this point. The MAGA caucus is jumping the shark.
I think it's a great point by the caller. I agree that it would help them in the general. The problem is that these people would be primaried. Any Republican that crosses over will be primaried, and the mega caucus will come out in the primary and take him out, not to mention all the money that will come in to take this person out. So that's, yes, to the caller's point, in Wisconsin 3, Wisconsin 1, Janesville and Western Wisconsin, sure, that would probably help you in general. It will not help you in a primary.
844-967-2789 from the 262. If Jim Jordan becomes Speaker, Dems win both the presidency and a House majority next year. Short term a mess, long time a progressive win.
Could be true, actually. I think that could be true. But in the meantime, we have an international crisis going on, not just with Israel now, but we see now that Iran is saying that they might, want to get into this. We have another aircraft carrier unit being moved into the Mediterranean by President Biden. By the way, I thought he did a great job last night on 60 Minutes. I think he's exactly the person that we need there right now. But we need have Congress working hand in hand with the president to do these basic national security issues, let alone, as I said, we're heading towards this cliff of another government shutdown. Do we really want our military women and men to be being unpaid going into the holidays? That's a realistic possibility.
Absolutely. But, Todd, Republicans just don't care.
Many don't.
They don't. They just don't care. Look at Tommy Tuberville holding up all of these promotions in the military. Look at Rand Paul. It's one person can step in the way and stop all of this progress just because they're having a hissy fit.
Yeah, it is abdicating the responsibility. And to the earlier texter's point that you made, Jane, that politically there is a real narrative, whether it is in Washington over what's going on at the House or here in Wisconsin with Robin Voss and others not getting their act together, not being serious. Republicans are showing voters they are unable to govern. And that is a narrative that Democrats could take into 2024 with real actionable examples to give to voters.
There's so much material to work with, right?
There is.
They got a lot of material, I'm telling you. And if you have questions about Jim Jordan and these allegations about him turning his head away from what was happening in the locker room of the Ohio State wrestlers, I suggest you Google video of some of the testimony and some of the people who testified that Jim Jordan called them, begging them not to throw him under the bus because it was going to harm his political career. Yeah. All right, we are coming up against the break. Bill, I see you on the phone. If you can hang on for just a second, we will come back with you. Stay with us. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane McNair in for Kristen Dry. Greg Bach is on the board. Todd Allbaugh, our friend and colleague, joining us as he does every Monday while Kristen is out on maternity leave for the first hour. Want to remind folks coming up right after 11 o'clock at 11:06, Attorney Joe McClear will be joining us. I know we had him on last month, Greg Bach. Really excited to have him on again. He is an attorney in Oshkosh who focuses on estate planning. So if you have elderly relatives or you are of a certain age, I would really encourage you to stick around so you can hear about some options on how to protect yourself, on how to protect your elderly relatives. It's really important to plan, not just for you, but for the people you're going to leave behind.
Call us with questions if you have them.
If you have them, you can always call 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. We're talking right now about the endless search for a Speaker of the House. Where is he? We need one. Where are they? Who should it be?
It should be you, Jane.
I volunteer.
Wouldn't that be great?
You don't have to be a member of Congress.
Right.
I could buy some
You'd be great.
I could buy some fake pearls. I could do a Nancy Pelosi. Probably not heels, but that's all right. Anyway, Bill from Oconomowoc has been patiently waiting. Good morning, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us. What do you want to say?
Good morning. Great topic on the Speaker. That's the caucus of chaos. Don't expect anything great to come out of it because it never does. I think with them and Trump, they're just cutting off their nose to spite their face. They're going to be the reason for their own demise. If you don't agree with me, look at Mike Lindell and look at Rudy Giuliani. I mean, those guys can't even afford a sandwich. Trump so far, and I don't know if I'm accurate, but I think he's already lost almost half his fortune or knows he will. Well, if he's lost that maybe to date or he can see that kind of what they deserve because they asked for it. Don't mess with America. Don't second guess America. If you try and attack America, Americans are smart enough as a whole in the percentage to realize what you're doing. I think it's going to be an interesting time. I'll long be dead before this all goes in the history books, but it's history happening every day. So keep doing the job you guys are doing and have a beer on me.
You got it, Bill. Thank you so much. We love it when you check in. 844-967-2789, 844-96-PARTY. It's funny that he mentioned about Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy now, too, is facing down bankruptcy. And I saw on Twitter over the weekend that General Mike Flynn, who is also a big QAnon, right-wing loon, Mike Flynn auctioned off an autographed pillow by Mike Lindell to help cover the legal bills for Peter Navarro. Is that not hilarious?
Had Mike Lindell not done anything, he would be, had he just stayed a Trump supporter and kept his, he would be so rich right now.
Yeah.
But he's dumping every dime of his own money into this, and no one can tell him different. This man is not well. He's not well.
I don't disagree with you.
I said, Greg, if you want to use it now, or you can use it later some other time, just your own personal time. Somebody posted on Instagram, and I am not the Instagram, queen that Kristen Bry is, but Mike Lindell was on there in a deposition on this bankruptcy thing.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And the attorney said something about a lumpy pillow.
Yeah.
And the guy just goes off, and I can't get enough. I've played it like a couple of times in our show. I can't get enough.
My pillows aren't lumpy. You're lumpy.
And then he starts cursing at him.
Yes,
and
it's fantastic.
Yeah, but Greg, I agree with you. I think fundamentally Mike Lindell is not a well man.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I wonder, does he have family who's like, can you just take it down a notch? Just
if he does
one
have
notch.
family, I'm sure they've tried and probably given up at this point. One more text I want to share with you from the 608. The GOP theme song for 23-24 is Desperate But Not Serious by Adam Ant.
Whoa, that's a deep cut.
Huh?
Oh.
New theme song, Greg Buck.
All right. Okay. I'll find it.
All right. New theme song. All right. Todd Allbaugh, not a good Saturday for the Badgers.
Oh, my goodness gracious. I listened to the first half right here on Civic Media. Of course, we stream the Badgers all season long on WRCE in Richland Center, and WRJN in Kenosha Racine, amongst others. And so you can listen to Matt LePay and Mark Tausier. I did that, and then I watched the second half on television. Boy, a lot of frustration. Badgers got beat by one of their rivals, Iowa, over the weekend. Iowa has the inside track now in the Big Ten West, and the Badgers are going to have some work to do. I think for me and others, one of the most disturbing things was that the Badgers just don't seem to have any identity right now. And you have most of the core players were recruited by Paul Christ and his staff, and now you have Luke Fickell and Phil Longo coming in trying to force this air raid style offense on them with the players that don't really fit that. And I think there's just a lot of concern by Badger fans of, look, that might be where you want to go and you might have success long term, but at least for this season and maybe into next, you kind of got to use the players that you have. And that didn't seem like what the Badgers were doing on offense. Defense was okay, but also just a lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy play, which is not indicative of the Badgers usually. Part of that might be new personnel, new assignments, that sort of thing. Offensive lines are getting pushed around all over. And, it was a lot of concern. And also, starting quarterback for the Badgers got taken out,
right?
On a hand injury. And now you've got Braden Locke, the backup quarterback, who came to Wisconsin with an awful lot of praise, transfer from Mississippi State. He learned the air raid offense from, now his name, Mississippi State coach, the guy, he just passed away last year. He's all about Pirates. It'll come to Mike Leach. Who created the air raid offense. This kid learned it under him before he transferred from Mississippi State after the untimely passing of Mike Leach. So he knows this offense. But again, our offensive coordinator Longo was not putting him in situations that he could really do well. So a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. Am I wrong in assuming, though, that this was always going to be kind of a rebuilding season?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that bought into the hype, amongst them Todd, and we bought into the hype, and I think maybe lower expectations would have been the name of the game. I still think Luke Fickell gets the job done long term, but it's going to take some time.
Would you say the Badgers are lumpy?
They're not lumpy.
They're not lumpy. Take
They
that
will
back.
not-
They're not lumpy. Todd Allbaugh, always a great pleasure having you on. We
You
will
guys
see
as
you
well.
next Monday at 10 o'clock and catch Todd from 1 to 3 this afternoon. We are going to the top of the hour news. Stay with us. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin. We are on, yes, the Civic Media Radio Network.